no matter
Sticks and
what.
stones may break my bones,
Yeah.
but D&D is what turned me into it. Never mind. They don't call you a dungeon master for nothing.
I know. The word roleplay, it's just what it is.
Hey!
I'm your host, Sarah, and
I'm your other host, Morgan.
we're two sisters
by marriage
who love to talk about stories.
From writing fiction and creating elaborate plot lines in D&D
to being a team player at your D&D table.
We're out of initiative. Today we're talking about being a team player at the D&D table, elevating your game, what makes players excel at the table, and we're talking a little bit about some kind of easy, actionable items that can help make you like better at D&D. And I don't mean that like min-maxing and doing faster math, because like I'm so sorry I can't teach you to add any faster. If I could, like, I would be a faster adder and I'd probably ever play a barbarian. But what we can talk about are some tips for how to be a better role player and how to just bring the best energy you can to the table, even though sometimes we don't have a lot of energy to give, you know?
Yeah. And a lot of this is it's just going to be basic respect, basic just skills. So we can, definitely talk about more specific instances, but a lot of it's just basic. When you're at the table, just give and take, and I was thinking about this all week before we came up with this. And I think we were talking too about how the DM is also a player at the table. And so we're going to definitely touch on how to be respectful to your DM and how to keep it fair and honest for everybody.
That's I'm into that. I'm excited to see where you're going with that one. I'm on board. So I kind of took some notes as I was thinking through this, because we talked about this a little bit, and then I wanted to dig in a little more because there's a lot to talk about, right? Like, this is beyond just how to play a high intelligence character versus a low intelligence character, right? Like, this is about like how to come to the table and like participate. And for me, like, two major things came up as I was thinking about this, which is like trying to be engaged with the story. Sometimes we're grown-ups with lives and stuff, and sometimes like I don't have all that much energy to give to a session as a DM or as a player, and that's okay. And no one is expecting you to be on all the time, and like don't expect that of yourself, but engaging with the story and engaging with the other players, first of all, is going to help build your energy, because I know for me, like, having a really positive interaction or having like something fun happen in the game helps kind of build that momentum, right? Like, it kind of is self-perpetuating. So trying to find things to be engaged with, or like relaxing and just enjoying everyone else's story, I think is great. And then the second thing is like reading the room. So when the group gets kind of silly, we don't want to get too far off track. Super duper, absolutely, yes. And also, sometimes like lean into the silliness, because you're gonna bond a little bit more as a group, and that's gonna bring more fun to the session, and then you're gonna be more excited to come back every week or every month or however often you can play. So those are like the two big ones that stood out to me. Sarah, what are the top kind of items in your mind for being a better player at the table?
Well, before I go into mine, I want to touch back on yours. You were saying, like, we don't always have full 100% energy. I mean, that's just day to day. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
I have noticed that often there'll be mornings where I'm just dragging, or I was really busy, or it was just a stressed day, and I sit down to play, and I'm definitely more like kind of hang back and just kind of watch everyone else have a good time. But then, like, I don't know, an hour into it, it's like I get the energy. It almost feels like when you go to the gym, right? Like, you hate going to the gym, but then you're so glad you went. And that's how I feel like I get more energized the longer the session goes on. And I think that's just part of just disconnecting with the real world and kind of just being more engaged. But there are times when I know we're working on a certain character's backstory and it's going to be, they're more centric. I kind of like those moments because I can just hang back add a comment or add a assist where I need to, and just let them have like their time to shine, which is kind of one of my biggest tips is to really know when to step up, but then also to kind of sit back and let someone else have a chance. And there's a lot of online D&D streaming that you can watch and see how other players really do this and do it well. There's times that I've seen, and I've also done myself, where say a particular skill check or an action is called, and you know your character is very good at this. There's an opportunity to ask some other character to step in and do this. And there's a role play moment. You can assist. Your character can, if they're not as strong, you can show them how to do it. And you can have this really great moment to get another character, kind of bring them forward as much as possible. Even though you would ace that, you would get that, no problem. I think it's really fun to see if another character can kind of, and it helps if you have any characters or players at your table that are a little more reserved, to kind of, if you're more outgoing and more confident, if you just bring them in, and say, hey, help me with this, or hey, pass it off to them. And even if they fail, it's fine. Like that's my second is when you're playing D&D, you will fail checks, you will not miss hits. It is part of the game. It's built into the system. And if you're whining and complaining every time, it gets very frustrating for everyone else at your table. I mean, it's just everybody is going to get those nat ones. Like it's just going to happen. And if you just roll with the punches, or even better, make it like a great moment, then it's all part of the game.
Yeah, I agree. And I think everybody has a different play style. And for some people, it's like, I'll just be really super honest. I feel like we don't often get to be the heroes of our real life story, right? We don't have any sense of control all the time. And here in this fantasy world, I can be a character who is all the things that I'm not, or all the best versions of myself, or the characters I like to write for myself, all the most neurotic forms of myself. I can just get it all out. I'm sure it's not a healthy coping mechanism, but like it's an option. And I want to have some control. Like I want her to succeed and I want her to fail as we're kind of working through a situation. And sometimes that loss of control, again, as you roll the dice, is a lot to kind of deal with. Like I'm in my fantasy world, I want to do well, I want to roll well. And if that's the type of character that you want to play, if that's the kind of experience you want to have, you can build a character that will have those fail safes, right? Like I think that this is I know that lucky is a feat that everybody kind of has an opinion on. And I think that in a character who just wants to succeed all the time, it might come across kind of boring. But when you have that in your back pocket and you have that little sense of I could try again, sometimes it kind of gives me a little bit more optimism. And I also like really try to squander the luck on as useless of things as possible. Like every once in a while, like, no, I'm going to use a luck point and re-roll to see if I can do this stupid back handspring so I can show off in front of an NPC. Because even though it's not useful, it like gives me a little more sense of control. So if you find that you're someone who's like really struggling with low rolls, or they impact you more than you want to, like look at some kind of other, maybe like a divination wizard or like a halfling, or a halfling divination wizard with lucky.
Yeah, now you're talking.
Right? Lots of opportunities to re-roll, and you just build a character around the fact that like I would like to roll well and I would like to control my fate a little bit more. And in doing so, hopefully be able to flex a little bit and say, hey, sometimes we fail. And that's the story we're trying to, like, we don't know what the story is. We're trying to tell it together. So is it that we fail in this moment and we have to try again? Maybe this is a story about, running at something and having an epic miss and then trying to take another run at it.
And I feel like that's part of being just a great team player at the table is everybody's going to have those low rolls, or they're going to have those epic rolls, and being excited for them or being disappointed alongside them is just, it's great because you're all going to get that. And so just be like supportive and not upset that, say they succeeded on something you were trying to do. Just, just roll with the punches. Like, just let it go. Don't hold grudges, because it'll all come back around. Always. It always does. It definitely, as much as it feels like it's not balanced with your dice, it is. And I know this from actually rolling a dice multiple times trying to get that nat 1. It took a very long time.
For that TikTok?
Yes. I would say a good hour of rolling this one dice before I got a nat 1.
Well, bring it to the session on Sunday. I'm sure it'll give you 5 nat 1s in a row, in the worst. That's funny because I actually found a spreadsheet that someone made that's a rolling it's like a, how do you say this? So it's, you roll your dice, it's 100 times, and then input what the rolls were, and it tells you the how weighted in one direction or another it might be, and what's the standard deviation, how close to balanced is this dice. And I've had a couple of dice that I've been this is gonna be so far off. This dice always give me natural 20s, or this dice always screws me over in the worst possible moment. And you roll it 100 times, which is still pretty small, right? That's a small sample size. You roll it 100 times and you're oh, this is actually it was pretty even. It was pretty evenly distributed across all the numbers that all 1 through 20. And then you kind of have to be okay, it's all right. Statistically, there isn't some divine being knocking my dice down to 1s. This is just math. Just let it happen. But I think that not holding a grudge and letting things happen and empowering other players to kind of make a check or have a roleplay moment with you as you try to show them how to do the thing, or have them put their ear against the wall so that you can show them how to pick a lock. That kind of brings me to another point that came up as Isaac and I were discussing this, which is find every opportunity to uplift other players, and that will always make you an excellent player at the table. So, we're in a situation where we're trying to get from point A to point B, and I don't have the tools necessary. I don't know how my character's going to do it. I'll ask for help, right? Ask for help from somebody who has the tool set to do it. Ask them to teach you, or, if the roles are reversed, offer your aid, offer that we could do it together. Or if you don't have any ideas, do you have, let's come up with a plan together, bringing another player in so that you guys can work together on solving a problem is ultimately what this is about. It's a collaborative storytelling process. So bring everybody else in.
Yeah, and I know from a player's perspective, when another player asks, hey, and they call me by my character's name, come help me with this. It is such a, I've been playing how long? And it's still, every time I'm oh, I'm special. It just makes it so great. And I feel speak up, ask for help. That's the other thing too. If you're struggling with something, no one can read your mind, and a lot of people aren't just going to step in and want to take this from you either. So say, hey, can you help me with this? Hey, and I think it just goes both ways. And the other, we were talking about how not trying to always take center stage. One thing I've noticed with some players on the online streaming is when you go into a new town or a new place and there's an NPC interaction, the first face-to-face NPC interaction. A lot of people joke it's always default high charismatic character, right? Don't always do that. If you're playing a really high charismatic character, sometimes let someone else do it. Let someone else go up, or bring them with you. I think that's such a great opportunity for the DM and that character or that player that doesn't normally get that position. And it's always been some of the best interactions I've ever seen. If they're low charisma, I think it's hilarious. So that's the main thing. If you're the face of the group, don't always sometimes stand back. It's okay. You'll get your chance again.
Let that awkward monk get in there and say something offensive, and then you get to retcon. You get to like kind of get in and like, whoops, whoops, whoops. Sorry about my friend. He's on drugs.
You get to salvage this relationship that you needed to have.
Whoops. Yeah, but it's gonna be a more interesting and entertaining story, and it'll give more opportunity for the rest of the group to be engaged.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it's in regards to just having the DM be another player. When the DM tells you something, just take it as fact. I mean, that's tough because I know there's been times like the DM says this, or I've seen it online too. The DM says this, the players go along with it. Later on, they find out it's wrong. The ruling was wrong, and just let it go, man. And if they say, if you roll a 10 and they say, "Oh yeah, everything looks good," for your perception check, it is. It is. Don't fight them on it. Just accept it and move on. Or if you're in combat and they say, "Oh, you're too close, you're going to be at disadvantage using that ranged weapon." Oh, well, I want to move. Well, they're going to get an opportunity of attack. Like, accept it. Okay. You know what I mean? Don't argue with the DM. They're not your enemy. And don't try and pull fast ones. Most DMs
so weird, yeah.
Catch that. And then if you're like asking to do something, don't try and confuse them. Like that, I've be straightforward and understand that it's a back and forth situation. So be respectful of they're doing a lot behind the screen. And so if you're asking for something, have it figured out in your head how you're going to ask for it. And see if you can help them a little bit instead of just making it more of a problem.
I was going to say that, well, first of all, you make a lot of really good points. I think some DMs will ask for help, which I think is great. I cannot, for the life of me, remember the rules for grapple. Is it a contested strength check and you can use athletics or acrobatics? It is. And so sometimes we say like, I need to look this up. DMs, it's okay. Look the rules up.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have all of that memorized. It's all right. Look it up. Ask a player to help you look it up because the players are really invested in getting it right as well. And, if the DM gives a shaky ruling or, I think one thing that we see in kind of one of the groups that we play in a lot is, the enemy takes, some damage and they're holding a concentration spell and the player prompts like, does that break their concentration? And so, like, there's definitely some give and take. Like, we're going to call each other on rules. And I do think that sometimes when the DM says, like, there's definitely room for, the DM has made a ruling. And I think it's okay to say, I think rules is written, that would be, athletics or acrobatics because I'm contesting the role. But I defer to your ruling, right? Like, that's ultimately what it comes down to is, like, I think it's this or that. According to the rules as written, that's, my understanding, or I happen to have that section up right now. Like, don't rules lawyer all the time. It's really obnoxious. And you ultimately get to make the ruling. And if the ruling is, no, I've decided that all grapple checks are stealth rolls, then great. They're stealth rolls now. That's
Yep.
If you got a problem with it, have a conversation offline, and work it through.
And as a player, you accept it and
move on.
Going. Yeah. And like you were saying with the concentration checks during combat, if you forget, be honest. Be honest. That's the other thing. Like the DM is so busy, and be honest. Be like, oh, I need a roll for that. Because they just it's too much for them to keep track. So just be fair.
Hilariously, one of the other tips I wrote down, you could try to put your phone down. I understand that not everyone has 100% attention 100% of the time. And I have played in sessions where I was feeling really disengaged. I wasn't happy with how the sessions made me feel. And I was really bummed about the interactions that were happening. And I was kind of like sitting at the table, really struggling, not comfortable saying anything to the DM. I didn't know them very well. And I had pulled my phone out I think I was looking up a rule originally and like looking up something on my sheet. And I had like gotten distracted, and I think this was pre D&D Beyond. I can't remember. I was just kind of like thumbing through something, trying to figure something out, and the DM was like, "Put your phone down." And I just remember being like, "I'm so disengaged here at the table. I'm really having a bad time." And I was trying to escape for 5 fucking minutes, because I'm just like, really, this is an unpleasant experience. And I got called out like that, and like, so that felt bad. And like, should you use your phone at the table? Probably not if you can help it. And some of us need a minute to escape. And that is the thing I like about virtual is I can be like, "Hey, give me a second. I need to run to the restroom." And I can just like fully disengage, walk away, take a beat, and then come back. Whereas at a real life table, sometimes it's like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm overstimulated, I am distracted, I'm struggling, and I need an escape and I can't get it because I'm just like, I feel like the eyes are on me. So like communicating your needs, stepping away when you need to, and like I think kind of knowing your own limits and then doing your best to not be distracted and be engaged in the session. Sometimes we're watching for texts from family, there's stuff happening in our real life and we can't fully disengage from real life to be in the game. But like doing the best that you can, I think is important. I know we actually have one player in one of our groups, that is always doing something in the background. And I finally was like, "Dude, what are you doing?" Because I know sometimes he's taking notes. And he was like, "I'm building my mini on Hero Forge because I feel like I can listen better if I'm doing something with my hands." Which, like, if we don't all have ADHD, like...
Yes.
Ooh,
I sort through my inventory. I sort through my spell list. Like, if someone else, they're having a one-on-one different part of the town or whatever, I'll go through my inventory and be like, "Oh yeah, I should sell that." And it's like kind of in the background, but I'm still listening.
Everybody engages differently, and like it's about finding what works best for you. So like if tweaking your mini because Hero Forge dropped some new items and you're not sure which scarf to use, like sure, you're still like engaged in the game. You're still playing with your mini for this game, and like it's something else to do with the same. Like if it helps you stay engaged, then great. But it's really just like, what's that? Finding that like fine tune of like what is it that helps me stay focused while I'm listening in for things that are happening that I want to actively engage with.
So, as from a DM's perspective, what are some traits that you've noticed that like good players have? I feel like we talk a lot about what the bad players are.
Easy to harp on the bad players.
Yeah, bad traits. I'm not gonna say bad players. Bad traits.
That's fair.
What are some good? What are some instances? You don't have to give specific examples, but some common themes that you've noticed with players from a DM's perspective that you're like, "Hey, that's good."
Players who are curious about the world, about the NPCs, about the items, not necessarily all, could be just one thing. Even if it's like the types of drugs that are sold and made in the city, like if the player can find something that they are interested in and it connects back to their character in some way or another, they're gonna be more fun at the table because they have found a way to engage. That doesn't mean that like I'm engaged when we're talking about fantasy drugs and I fully shut down when we're talking about anything else. Like that's not very fun. But players who find something to be engaged with within the story and especially within other players or within other characters. We were kind of offhandedly talking about like, oh, sometimes you have your tragic backstory. My family was lost in a sea accident, and maybe another player is like, "Oh, I used to be out on a boat and I saw an accident," and that like now these two players have a reason to connect. I will say, as an aside, that for all DMs, I like pretty much always recommend now that like most or all of the group have some type of session zero where they have a reason to know each other. Maybe they're siblings. Maybe they were in the same circus troupe years ago. Maybe they've been in a series of bar brawls during a pub crawl across the entire town, and they're like rivals turned friends. Like they should have some sort of connection. In addition, I shouldn't say should, that's not fair. But I think that makes the session go a lot easier. It's a lot easier for players to jump into a character that connects with other characters if they have a reason to be tied together. And that's important, especially for when we like to write our sad, moody loner characters, because we love them. We love them.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah.
And I think that's great. And a sad, moody loner needs to have a reason to be traveling with a party. Otherwise, this is the wrong character for you to bring to the game. So, if my sad, moody rogue wants to travel the world with her little rat and her little rat buddy, and she meets some people and she decides she wants to travel with them, why is that? We have mutual interest? Have I never had a family and now suddenly these people give me a feeling of kinship? Like, what is it? Engage with the other characters. What is it that makes me want to take my watch and actually keep these people safe at night?
So that's,
and I think that's really critical.
As a DM that you would like absolutely right out of the gate recommend, and it just sets the tone for the rest of the campaign. So
yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I fully support that. I think that's great.
I think, like, I mean, everybody has the, like, archetypes that they like to play. I love to play, like, a neurotic gay woman. Like, that's... no.
You do have a type.
I have a type. And I love, like, the, like, over-anxious, overthinker. I do love to play high charisma characters because I'm really bad at shutting my mouth. And it's a little bit easier when, other characters are like, okay, chatty, like, or like a low charisma character who loves to talk, or a low charisma, the one that we have going right now, a low charisma character who doesn't necessarily love to talk, but she never has anything productive to say, and it's just really fun to like jab in like lines that just like never land, and that's the intent. That's really fun for me too. But like finding like what is it that I like to play, like what little part of myself do I like to inject into a character, and then just like see what happens. Like what do they want? Do they want friendship? Do they want someone to chat to? Do they want somebody who's obsessed with meat pies and they feel like they can mother them? Like what's the thing? Yeah.
I think if you can find a character, if you're creating your character inspired from a TV show or a movie or a book, and then infuse a little bit of your own personality into it, I think that helps the whole time you're playing. You can just react more honestly that way. If something comes up, you go, oh, this is what this character would like. It makes it, you can react so much faster. And I think that just helps with the flow. And the high charisma, I feel like if you want to play a warlock and you're kind of shy and reserved, play warlock. It's okay. Like, even though you're going to probably have pretty high charisma, it's okay. Like, play your character. But yeah, definitely build it to fit your personality in as much as possible. I know from having two very charismatic characters and then having a third now with very low charisma, it has been quite the pivot. I'm not saying I'm disappointed in this other character, but it's very hard to keep back and realize what my other strengths are. It's a barbarian, so she's very strong. But it's, she has other skills, but it's different. It's very different play style. And so I think that, like, going forward, I would probably lean more towards the charismatic character too. But that's just me. I know there are some people that's like, they just want to fight. And be a great fighter.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. And so, just what suits you.
I think that, like, especially for newer players, that's, like, the best advice always is, like, either if you don't want to have to push that, like, it's fun to push your character to, it's fun to be this barbarian, and I don't think it's very sustainable to be that kind of character, like, long term, right? So you're thinking about, like, okay, so maybe the next one I'm gonna kind of skew back the other way. And that advice also works for newer players, right? If I'm not sure what kind of choices this character is going to make, or if I'm really uncertain with my role playing. And I also think this is Ginny D had a TikTok very recently that was like charisma. A high charisma character doesn't have to be like boisterous and chatty and like the life of the part, like everybody's funny uncle. Like they can be like reserved and thoughtful. Like their charisma could come from being intimidating, and she suggested like talk to your DM, explain like I want them to come across scary. My low charisma character, I want her to have low charisma but be like really intense, and her low charisma comes from constantly being just too blunt all the time, and that's why she just like never lands. And that's how I'm trying to play her, and like you communicate that with your DM and then they know how you want to be received. I also think she pointed something out that is advice that I always give, which is there will be people at the table, I know we're like this, who are going to go 100% improv. I'm speaking to you in character. I might have an accent. I'm going to make suggestions and I'm going to talk in character, like fully in character, full RP. So much fun for me. And other people are really uncomfortable with that playstyle for themselves. So if that's not what you want to do, don't just say like, I persuade them. Offer, I think Jenny's example was, I'll persuade this shopkeeper. I'd like to persuade this shopkeeper to give us a discount by reminding them how much business we've brought in for them. There's always a middle ground. Like it doesn't have to be like, I fully disengage. Caveat being, of course, I love caveats. Caveat, of course, being, if you want to use a specific skill set, like I would like to intimidate this person with what I am about to say. Sometimes it's helpful to communicate that really clearly to your DM, like, oh, sir, don't you remember we've brought in all of this business? I'm hoping to be intimidating with this. Like, throw that in there. Like, be really clear about what you're hoping to establish or hoping to have come across. And it doesn't have to be 100% in character. It doesn't have to be 100% out of character. There's this like nice middle ground where you say like, this is what this is the speech I'm trying to give. And then you'll be more comfortable with more of the heavy roleplay moments.
And I think that goes hand in hand with helping your DM too. If someone's injured and you say, I would like, with my medicine background, to check for this, and it just right out of the gate you've made it clear to your DM what you're going for, instead of just being like, well, I'm going to look for wounds. Well, perception, investigation, I mean, it could be nature, it could be so many things if you're just very specifically calling that. And then same with like you were saying, persuading or intimidating. I mean, sometimes those lines blur, and I know sometimes the DM's like, what are you trying to do? Like, yeah, how exactly are you trying to open that gate by being intimidating? You know what I mean? So it just be clear about it. But then you're right, it does kind of reduce. You don't have to just be in your voice the whole time. You can kind of break it down a little bit, and just make it easier for the other players to realize what you're trying to do. And I feel like if you do say, I'm going to try and persuade the shopkeeper, and then say what you're going to say, if there's other players at the table, they're going to pick up on that. You're going to notice that even if they're more reserved, that they're going to start doing that too. And I think one of my biggest tips to getting other players to role play is to use an accent. I think I've said this before.
I love using a voice or an accent.
Nothing comes close to getting everyone at the table to just dive full in and engage when you use an accent. I mean, even just a Western or Southern or whatever. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. Or just a different
choose
way to
an appropriate accent. If you choose an appropriate accent that isn't offensive, right? Like that's important.
Yes. I think that just instantly you'll get just try it. Like just try it, and you will see someone that doesn't normally enter. Like all of a sudden, it flips a switch, and they just open up and they just role play with you. So I definitely, that's one of my biggest tips. It just shakes it all up. Great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, these are great tips, and I hope that we can continue to build this list and get advice from other people to continue to like improve our game and help others improve theirs.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we could definitely do a part 2 to this.
I think so too.
Yeah, the more we dive into it. I mean, there's just, and I'd like to, do more of like the good traits and things that, players can implement pretty easily.
Absolutely. Well, we've been out of initiative, but we're gonna get back into it. So go roll some dice and tell some stories, and we'll see you next time.
To be a team player during role play? See, I don't know.
Like
I know, but
elevating your game
BDSM
for a better collaborative story.
What were you gonna say?
I can hear your kids so well.
Oh no! The whole time.
I think the whole time, yeah. But I don't know. I just figured we could pause and see if they stopped yelling at any point. I don't know. That's my like solution to everything. Is like I think I'll just wait and see if it stops.
I think it stopped.
The exciting thing is over.
I can mute it. Let our kids shut up. I think it stopped.
Mommy's working.
I know.
Editing Isaac.
Yep.
Da-da-da-da.
So what were you gonna say? Oh,
I was waiting to see if you were gonna say thanks for joining us, and I was just like, I'm not gonna talk over you this time. And you're like,
that talking over is something we can. It's hard when you're virtual. I feel like I know we're done. I'm gonna stop, but I feel like.
Thanks for listening to Out of Initiative, a podcast from Merely NPCs. For more from Sarah and Morgan, visit merelynpcs.com or follow them on Instagram @merelynpcs.